lead from the heart, first and
Lead from
foremost.
the
I
heart.
think it'll always come down to that. So the best leader I had always made me feel incredibly welcome. Knew my family members by name and just was so incredibly encouraging so early in my career that I would have probably taken a very different trajectory if I didn't have him as an initial example. Follow your passion, follow your purpose, follow something that lights you up so you know that you're not going to regret it in the long run. I don't think anything beats doing something that just gets your heart pumping, where you get up in the morning and you're just really proud of yourself and you look in the mirror.
Hi and welcome to Lead Well.
Hi and welcome to Lead Well. Today is a special episode because I have a fantastic guest with me, and this is Tatjana Genys. Hi, Tatjana.
Hi, Christine. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm so looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Same. Pretty exciting topic too. Thank you.
So let me quickly say a few words about you. We have been working in the same company and also together for quite some while. I think it was about 10 years. And so I got to know you as a person and also as a fantastic leader. And when I looked up your LinkedIn, I found a review from one of your employees, and I have to read it because it's so amazing and so spot on. So he said she was a pivotal player acting like a glue between other service delivery business units and our stakeholders in the US, driving strategic initiatives. Probably one of the best managers I have ever had. Her ability to juggle performance with the freedom of innovation and flexibility allowed for a very stimulating work environment. Her empathetic but logical and ambitious personality provided a solid platform for her team to flourish. Who wouldn't be really proud about that review? And it's so spot on. So this is, I couldn't have said it in those exact words, but this is spot on what I experienced with you as well. And the interesting thing is now you have moved out of corporate, just a bit like me, but in a different capacity, in a different role. So now I see that you are identifying yourself professionally, at least, as an author, a philanthropist, I can't even pronounce it, a leader and a coach, and you call yourself a medicine woman. Now, this is so exciting, and I know you are a leader 100%. So I want to dig deeper into this topic with you. So what is leadership? What is healthy leadership, sustainable leadership? And I invite you to share your wisdom with us. So what in your world is leadership?
Yeah, I loved it. And thank you so much for starting with the quote. It actually now took me a couple of years back, and I've been sitting with this question a lot, probably ever since you asked me the question or invited me to that conversation. And it's taken me on a bit of a journey myself, because I think that there are some incredible individuals who are born leaders, but majority of us have to learn it. And oftentimes we learn it the hard way. It's either because you have a great manager or you don't, or because you are a great manager or you're not. And my view or my philosophy on leadership has changed probably every single year. So as I grew and developed as a manager, also the role I saw myself playing within the organization, with certain associates, with future managers afterwards, actually changed quite drastically. But my biggest lesson in leadership, funny enough, came probably the year I left the corporate world. And that was when I traveled all the way up to Bhutan to sit in a monastery. And I actually got to learn what leadership truly looked like from a head monk, which was very fascinating. And I think that's changed my entire approach to what conscious leadership looks like, and the difference between leadership and fellowship, and how you can have one but completely miss the other, and how you can be a great leader on paper but completely or totally lose your team along the way. So I think that's taken me on a journey of leading from the heart and really focused on purpose-driven leadership with a bigger picture in mind.
Wow, I have goosebumps all over. So Wow, that's so fascinating. And sorry for interrupting you. I'm like, I just wanted to share that I have a visceral reaction to what you're saying.
Yeah, I love that. And I was actually nearly done because, I think that's the trajectory for me for my future leadership going forward, because I'm also a big believer that leadership starts at home. It starts with the conversation you have around the kitchen table. It finishes by the time you come to bed. It's the way you lead by example when nobody's looking. So there's so many definitions of leadership, and you choose the type of leader you want to be and the leadership you want to see in this world of tomorrow. So it's a topic I can expand on for hours, but let me pause there and
Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
see
so
where you
it's
want to
so
take the
so exciting.
conversation.
And I love this way that you said it's about leadership and fellowship and also followership. I mean, in business school, I always explained that you cannot become a leader without having people following you. So you can be a manager without the acceptance of others, but you cannot be a leader without the acceptance of others. And thank you for reminding us of that.
Yeah,
That's so
you know
great.
what? I couldn't agree more. There was this great quote I read once with you can get to the top fastest on your own, but it's going to be really lonely at the top. And that's just such a testament to the people you work with, the people that work for you or you for them, depending on how you want to see it. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and that's also an interesting aspect. So say more about that. You working for people, people working for you. So how do you see that?
Yeah. Look, I always feel like there's an equal exchange to some degree, or maybe that's a lesson that came to me the hard way. Maybe starting with a personal, not great leadership example, because I think these are the moments that really shape who you become as a person. It actually brings me back to probably one of my most successful years in the corporate world, the time before I got promoted and into a big leadership role that I've been aspiring for a really long time. And during that year, I applied an approach that was a lot more stick than motivation, because we were really far behind compared to any of the other teams. So we end the year in shining colors, best improvements, performance, recognized on every single board you could see within the organization. But I looked around the room and my team was absolutely defeated. And that was probably the year where I had to really reevaluate myself as a leader and what I wanted, my definition of leadership, but what success looked like for me, to then see how I wanted to take that experience going forward. So fast forward 2 years and we're in the middle of COVID, and I had the incredible, fortunate luck of being assigned Middle East, Africa, and India, so regions that were really struggling during that time. And if I hadn't had the previous experience where I learned what not great leadership looked and felt like in my eyes, that time would have probably gone very different. But as a result of it, the conversations we had with the leadership team became a conversation around fast forward 12 months, 24 months from now, what do you want to be remembered by as a leader? So these are moments where you really have to decide there are good things you can do for the organization and there are good things you can do for your people. Sometimes you will have to choose, and that's when you choose what type of leader you're going to be. But especially in moments where you know that is significantly going to impact people's lives, I think you have a responsibility as a leader to really look out for them in the same way as you have social responsibility in so many different ways. That's where you owe your team that you have their best interest in mind. And when you start with a point of value to your team, to the organization, to your colleagues, to your partners, success automatically follows.
Wow. Wow. So literally put the person first, put the individual first.
Always, yeah. If you
Okay.
do things for, and I guess that brings me back to fellowship versus leadership, right? You notice something isn't going right for your team, or your team isn't doing something right. You have a choice to either name and shame them and put it out there for everybody to see. Super effective. Lots of people will choose that leadership style. Or you can take them to the side and talk about values, integrity, what we represent, understand what's going on in their life, and actually be the investigator. I think you mentioned in one of your previous podcasts, which I absolutely loved, of really digging deep when you have that situation in front of you. So I guess that's what I mean with you choose the type of leader you want to be in the world we want to lead well going forward.
Wow. And so you mentioned that monk at that monastery to be your now role model of a great leader. So in a few words, what do you think makes up a great leader and what distinguishes them from the average one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a colleague of mine yesterday, actually, when we were talking about this podcast in preparation, she summarized it really well what I saw in that monk. And that's the ability to really balance well when you're patient and when you're firm. But I think in this instance, I just got to see visually what fellowship looked like. So if I can just illustrate that in a 30-second story, because it literally felt like I was taken out of my living room and put into this movie theater. And we were sitting in that monastery with the head monk. There's a ranking system in a monastery similar to a school. And he had spent an hour with us talking about his view on the modern world when 13 senior monks went on a pilgrimage for 2 weeks to spend some time with that individual. And they come into the room where he just spent time with us and they bow down in front of him because he's taking care of their Rinpoche who will inherit 27 monasteries once he's done. But just the way they showed respect for everything he did, for his actions, for the way he represented it, and the way we got to witness him one foot in each world, if you wish. So very much in tune with what's happening in the modern world, but also still very much in tune with what he wanted to accomplish. I think that summarized conscious leadership for me. So being able to navigate the two and knowing when to be firm and when to be patient.
Wow, that's a great quote as well. So knowing when to be patient and when to be firm. Wow, that's
lead
great.
from the heart, first and
Lead
foremost.
from the heart.
I think it'll always come down to that. So the best leader I've had always made me feel incredibly welcome. Knew my family members by name and just was so incredibly encouraging so early in my career that I would have probably taken a very different trajectory if I didn't have him as an initial example.
Wow, wow. Well, that's important as well. You're saying if you didn't have that person as a role model, you probably would have not have ended up where you're now.
Where I ended up, absolutely. So it was the beginning, because I think in the beginning, when you're just starting out in a leadership role, you really need somebody who is really nurturing around you. And if that's not your current boss at the minute, find yourself a mentor, a colleague who will really recognize you for the good things that you're doing. Because in the beginning, the only way you can learn is by getting things wrong, frankly. And then the longer you progress, you get to see different examples and you get to learn and take away something from every single leader. Somebody's great at storytelling, otherwise, other people are great at data and analytics. And then it just becomes a question of not being shy and raising your hand if you don't know something, but most importantly, just not staying there. So not being afraid to ask for help as a leader. I think that can be incredibly powerful, even or especially if you're also doing that in front of your team and actually just inviting them to the conversation to show you're all on the same parameters.
Wow, wow. So also being humble and, like Brené Brown calls it, vulnerable.
100%.
Wow.
100%. It's a game changer in an organization.
Yeah. So let's switch to now, because now you're working as a solopreneur, an entrepreneur. And what are the lessons that you can still apply? Now you're the leader to, one could say to no one, but on the other hand, I always say you can lead everyone out there. So what is it that you're now applying from what you learned?
Yeah, but you know what? It's so interesting. I actually don't differentiate the two. And that probably brings me back to the point where leadership starts at home. I think it's a mentality that you adopt. So I don't think I ever went out beforehand thinking I need to influence the team or I need to inspire the team, but there's certain actions you do that are just habitual. You come in at a certain time, you get your work done, you lead by example. And I think that's the way that I've also started looking at it as a solopreneur, because whilst you don't have other people to motivate, you're constantly self-motivating, right? Whilst you don't have a team to regulate, you're constantly self-regulating. So a lot of the skills I learned, I'm actually surprised with how many of the skills I learned translate into my current role. Like you said, so I write, but I also hold spaces. So I'm a sound healer. I studied dance therapy. I started to speak. So a lot of experiences that I had in the boardroom, speaking in front of other people. These are skills that are all applicable. I think once you're in a coaching industry, when you've been a leader for such a long time, it's something you bring home. You bring it to your friends, to your family. So it's probably still ingrained in every single conversation. I just don't have maybe the KPI and the data and analytics in the same way I had them before. But you start looking at your financial reporting, and you actually start looking at your life as a business. So it's applying all the lessons that you did for your spreadsheet and keeping track and looking at business performance and business growth and profit. And you actually become one mini organization, technically, right? So you're doing the sales process, the marketing. So I'm learning heaps of new skills at the same time, whilst trying to see what's still useful that I can take with me on that journey.
Wow, that's great. And you're right. At the end, the one thing that always surprises me as a solopreneur is now I'm really doing everything.
Yeah.
Like, everything that earlier on I could outsource to different departments and different colleagues. I'm like, okay, now it's me.
Yeah. Who's going to take that job today? Okay, me.
Okay, yeah, that's it. That's true. Wow, so very same experience here. So what would you advise to people who are currently not happy in their job? Because you have taken a big leap of faith there. So what would be your advice for them?
I guess it depends a little bit on individual circumstances. First of all, I would try to understand, is it that I'm unhappy in the current circumstance right now? And that might just be the way the year is going, the way my accounts are fluctuating, this quarter wasn't great. So that might be a temporary question that is potentially very quickly solved given a little bit of time. Then there's a question where you feel like I am in the right organization, but maybe in the wrong place. And then the recommendation is just to explore as many people and roles as you possibly can. So get really curious to understand what just sounds great on paper, but isn't maybe to the best of your abilities. I'm a big lover of professional development and inner work. So I would always recommend doing that on the side. If you're already further down your career and you know this isn't the place for you, the way my journey went, I think I've known for the past 7 years that this isn't moving in the right direction, which is a really long time if you think about it. But I read this epic book once called When to Make the Jump. And it's for people who are planning a big career move, where it's not just moving from one department to another, but to really plan a bigger shift. So the first time I knew I wasn't in the right role was actually when I attended a self-development course, and I was talking and listening to the guys who were holding the event, and they're talking about their vision. And for the first time when they talked about their vision, I thought this is what I should be doing, not what I'm doing right now. But it would take me another 7 years, and I studied with them. I started to run conferences with them, but something still felt like there was something that was still missing. So my next recommendation as a result of it, keep trialing it. So before you jump, actually keep trialing whether that really is what you think it is. And it took me 7 years for actually all the pieces of the puzzle to come together, so I could understand where all the different parts would come together with me. And everybody is different. I chose 4 very different sectors. So don't necessarily make my mistake and focus on one thing that you really enjoy, but trial it, test it, and then plan your jump. And specifically the planning your jump when it comes to the financial side is one that I would emphasize. Take a look at how much you're spending, in what areas, and what your non-negotiables are, to ensure that those you still can continue doing whilst you're continuing on your path. And that will give you a buffer. So I had a buffer of about 2 years planned, and that I knew I could invest in my own business. before I would really need to make a decision one way or another. And then just follow your passion, follow your purpose, follow something that lights you up, so you know that you're not going to regret it in the long run. And if it fails, you can always go back. I think that's the piece that I wish somebody would have maybe told me when I'm 20, 30, or earlier in the beginning of my career. But at the same time, I've taken so much wisdom, so much knowledge, and I've gained so much from the organization and that experience that I also wouldn't have turned it back. So I guess my advice to anybody considering is just have faith in yourself and keep having faith. Surround yourself with people who are supportive of your vision. Find yourself a new tribe, because your old tribe will want to keep you safe. Find yourself a new tribe who is very determined, who wants to see you succeed, who will give you some new ideas and recommendations, and then just keep chipping away every single day. Some days will be epic, some days will be not, but overall it turns out pretty amazing, and you'll be so proud that you don't look back.
Wow, that's great. What I love about it is you have the same approach as me. Is like, I'm all for trialing, experiencing it, and not thinking that you have to make 100% decision before you're doing something new. You can always try it out on the side. And then if you don't like it, as you said, try something new. There are so many opportunities out there. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. If I can just expand on that for one moment. So as I progressed on that journey, because also you as an individual, the more you progress, the more you change. So I don't expect myself to do the same things in 10 years necessarily as I'm doing today, or the topics might change. But healing became a really big part of my journey, my personal journey, my family's journey. So I studied sound healing, dance therapy, and when I started running dance therapy, I actually didn't enjoy it. But now when I have clients who come to me for coaching, or when I'm holding space, in certain instances, it still flows in. So where there is a requirement, then I actually get to practice it in the way I love to practice it. So similar to what you asked me around my corporate career, around what can you still adopt, you never know when this knowledge will become useful. So one of the things I learned is it's never a waste. If you've gone down that line, it will either teach you what you don't want, which is an epic start to learning what you do want, or it will go down the book of memory lane.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned this great book, When to Jump, and we'll definitely link it to the show notes. But now let's talk about you as an author, because you have written books now as well. So do you want to share about those?
Yeah, I would love to. Oh my gosh, this is my my passion, baby. So I would love to share. Thank you for asking the question. Writing came to me probably somewhere towards the end of my career, and initially it just became a little bit of fun. Because we were in quite a structured environment, I was looking for an outlet of something to do that would just I guess ease it and make it a little bit lighter. So when I wrote my first book, which is called I See You, I actually never intended on publishing it. And that book not only just became really the epiphany of hope in my mind, it actually gave me a platform to really put into words or say a lot of the messages that I really wanted to send in this world. It gave me an opportunity to leave an imprint in the way that I maybe wanted to leave this world. What I didn't realize is that it would also teach me to see myself. So it's funny how sometimes the titles work, because the next book I wrote was called Find Your Center. And that's a collection of poetry, and that is probably the transition between me being in corporate and stepping onto a really different, somewhat spiritual path. I then still didn't learn my lesson and wrote a book called From People Pleasing to Boundary. I don't know if we can say it on a podcast, bad beep. So I had to learn a lot about boundaries, and still learning. I guess that's an ongoing part of the journey. And then I wrote an empowerment book, or an empowerment journal, a kid's poem, a book with my son that is now in the re-editing process, but that's still for next year and the year after.
Wow, that's an impressive list already of books. And I know there will be more to come, knowing you.
A healthy selection. But you know what? Above all, it's just been a lot of fun. And
Wow.
because throughout the process, I actually never thought of publishing them. I literally thought it'll be just fun. It actually also didn't feel like work. And
Mm.
maybe coming back to your earlier question, it's also find something that just doesn't feel like work.
Wow.
There's another great book by Michael Check, author, 16-letter name. I will butcher his surname, so I won't try. But it's called Flow. And
Mm-hmm.
he talks a lot about the concept of actually finding an activity where you just lose time.
Mm-hmm.
You lose track of time. It's something that you can always get better at, but
Mm-hmm.
you just enjoy it so much. So
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know what you're looking for, just follow the things that bring you so much joy,
Mm.
and where time just passes without you even knowing it.
Wow. Yeah, the person where I learned my coaching approach from, Angelica Golder, she has a really interesting approach to finding out what you like, because there are a lot of people out there who don't even know what they really like doing. And she said, think back when you were a child, like 8 years, 10 years, what was it that you loved doing then? And also, were you playing on your own or in a large group? Were you a follower in the group? Were you a leader in the group? What was it? What type of activity did you do? And this is so insightful, because as a child, you don't think, you just do what you like and what.
Yeah, you just follow the bliss, hey?
Yeah.
And I absolutely love what you said, because I would have absolutely put me in the same category a couple of years ago. I
Mm.
actually had to ask myself that question at one point. If I wasn't a mother, a wife, or the director of a large corporation, who am I underneath it? Because I think sometimes we get so caught up in life and paying the bills and following what we think success looks like, or
Yeah.
what everybody tells you sometimes success looks like, might be socially, culturally, your home upbringing. So kudos to anybody who's currently in that boat. If I can do it, you absolutely can. And it's actually a really exciting self-discovery journey when you put yourself on that path.
Yeah, and it's almost like you start living your own life, because a client of mine, when she's talking about the current situation she's in, it's pretty obvious to someone from the outside that she's living the life that others would want her to live. And now you have taken this big step of definitely living your own life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was somewhat also, I guess, part of the driver of why I called the business the art and science of choosing you.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, it was really more focused on the art, because I really wanted it to be around fulfillment and joy and celebration, and actually being allowed to step into passion and
Mm-hmm.
purpose and living out your truest, fullest sense of belonging. But then I also wanted to really balance head and heart. So as much as I want to create a business that is fully led by heart, I also think there needs to be a very solid business foundation. So that's where the science part comes in.
Yeah.
And then also, I just got addicted to things like mental health and suicide rates, and trying to see how you can, I guess, prevent them from a health conscious point of view. So can
Mm.
totally relate where your friend is also coming from, with feeling initially not even pushed, but success is contagious and people celebrate you and it looks great on paper, and your ego loves it, and you get a beautiful paycheck, and you get to afford all these different things which are just epic, and I don't want to take away from them, because they've given me a life I could have probably never had for myself, for my son. Like, meet beautiful people like you all across different parts of the world. I think what it came down to for me at the end was I just saw myself disconnecting more and more from myself as a result of it. That version that I was growing into, developing, and also the higher, I guess I went up the senior leadership role, just wasn't how I wanted to see myself or who I wanted to be as an individual, not what I necessarily wanted to represent, and also not how I wanted to lead, full stop. And that's not just to that organization. I was also board of directors for a big charity firm, because I thought maybe that's the solution of just moving into a different field that is all focused on doing good. But I guess my biggest lesson with that was I felt really detached from the ground, and it looked epic on paper, but it was actually still really disconnected to heart. So I don't know if that would help in the individual you're currently working with, but I don't think anything beats doing something that just gets your heart pumping, where you get up in the morning and you're just really proud of yourself and you look in the mirror. And that's a journey that's not for the faint-hearted at the same time, pun intended, but it's so worthwhile taking that journey and taking that step, because I think that's the life you won't regret, or the one that I don't want to regret.
Wow, that's wonderful. And I would love to talk to you for hours and hours, but taking in account our time, I have two more questions for you.
Please.
So, who is the best manager you ever worked for or with, as you said, and what made them so great?
Yeah, I've probably been really fortunate where I had two really great managers in my life. One was when I just moved to the UK, and at that point it was just a job where I was helping out. But that leader was determined to do everything himself, in the sense that he was not shy to like anything, like even put up the hoover in the organization and just get his hands dirty. And I really learned humble leadership from his side, because he was also incredibly service focused. So I think the service focus I learned from this individual in my corporate career, and hands down, Rick Jackson. I think he was the representation for me of head and heart. And just the way he cared for individuals was just incredibly, incredibly inspiring. Will always have a very special place in my heart.
Yeah, I remember him very fondly as well. So having a heart for the people that you're working with, and let's say with, because I'm also not a fan of saying they're working for me, or we're working together in that setting. And also getting your hands dirty. So not shying away from doing the stuff yourself. That's great. And now, if we consider the healthy part of leadership, what have you done on a personal level to stay mentally, let's say, healthy and sane in an increasingly demanding world?
Yeah, I love that question. So there are a lot of things, and I guess the things I will focus on now are the ones where I saw myself drifting a little bit first, and that's continuous personal development for you as a leader. And so maybe going back a little bit to the topic of it's okay if you don't know the answer, but not staying there. I think as a leader, you always need to be faster when it comes to development. I've had coaches outside of my corporate career every single year. So I used to travel on a development course every half a year, at least at a minimum. And I would always have a coach outside of my organization. They can be outside of the department I was working in, or outside of the company, because I also always thought that that gives you an edge and an advantage that your current organization won't have, because sometimes, especially if you've been in the organization longer, as a leader, you can get a little bit of a funnel view. So from a mental point of view, and that was actually completely outside my field. So that's why it was probably so beneficial, because that was focused on mental, spiritual, energetic, physical evolvement. And then when I would come back, I would realize with how easy I could deal with all the stuff that in the past would have maybe started to get annoying or difficult, or where I wouldn't have had patience, because it literally resets your entire nervous system. So that has been incredibly helpful. In my higher career, when I started to get really busy, I used to have 12, 14 meetings per day. You're drinking a lot of coffee, you're sitting down a lot. I started to do walking meetings with my team. So one-on-ones that are strategic planning meetings when you needed to drive some change, or there were more discussions rather than sitting in front of your laptop analyzing a specific problem. We would either walk, or we would try to find a seat outside, so you're not constantly indoors either. And then I'm a big firm believer on your calendar controls your day. So it's actually having all of that time scheduled. That includes break time, that includes time with your family. As silly as that might sound, but I actually had family blocks in my calendar. And that just helped me shift from, now I put my director hat off Now it's family time. So now it's goofy, fun time, play time with my then 6-year-old or now obviously 14. So slightly different trajectory, but just focused on your own physical, mental development, and then also on the team, because through those different walking meetings, it actually ensured that they're in a healthier spot. And then it just goes hand in hand.
Wow, that's great. So get a coach, make sure you self-develop, calendarize everything, including your family, and then do meetings outside or in a different environment and walking if possible. I love that.
Or even, if you're starting the meeting and your team has been from one meeting to another too, is actually give them just 3 minutes to breathe. So everybody can just finish and actually land in the meeting, finish the last email you need to send, finish whatever just happened, and let's just meet each other where we're at. We started developing different games, which you can be really silly with your teams at certain times, where you have 30 seconds to just draw how your day was up until this morning. And sometimes that would change the whole trajectory of the meeting, because sometimes you would also realize how much your team is carrying, or if somebody is going through actually a really difficult physical, mental, emotional time at the moment. And then that just elevates the entire team. You do something for one person. Again, it comes back to fellowship and just caring for each other as individuals at the deepest leadership level you can.
So as you said at the beginning, lead with your heart. That's
always
it.
Always
Wow.
come back to your heart.
So Tatjana, this was such a wonderful conversation. Where can people find you if they want to learn more from you and work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love it if people reach out. I always love feedback. So I've got a website called Tatjana.Genys. You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, even though apparently my coaches told me that there's a lot more work that I need to do there, but it's at love_your_being. But if you reach out to me either through my website or find me on socials, I'm normally quite quick to respond.
Wow. Well, as I said, I could go on for hours with you, but thank you so much. Thanks for all not your time, but your wisdom and your insights. That was really very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks to all our listeners. Bye for now.
This was Lead Well. Now, what is the one thing that you're taking away from this episode? Please share in the comments below, and do share the podcast with your friends and family, but only if you like it.